They really hold tight to their leadership principles. They expect, 110% out of you. You're working late nights. You're answering calls in the middle of the night to meet India teams, but then in the morning you have to, meet other teams around the world, and it's an expectation, and it can be very cutthroat. You have leaders coming down on leaders that are coming down on you. If things go wrong and you get, on the bad side of a manager, you can be toast pretty quickly. I've seen it so many times where if they want you out, they'll get you out real quick. And it can be a very stressful and sort of anxiefied and depressing
Wow.
experience, man.
Hello, folks. Thank you for watching another episode of Revenue Playbook Chronicles. I'm your host, Gene Lytle. So I have a special guest, Pat Hanna. He is the CEO and founder of Seller Pro. Prior to that, he was an Amazonian, which was an Amazon employee in seller services, and he was a global trainer for them, helping people being able to sell on Amazon. So please welcome. Hi, how you doing, Pat?
I'm
Welcome.
good. Thanks, Gene. Thanks for having me. How's
No
it
problem.
going?
Where are you calling from today, Pat?
I'm in Tucson, Arizona. It's about 102 degrees out, but it's feeling good.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, it does get warm out there. I remember my mom talking about Tucson, Arizona, and how devastating hot it was, and she had to move.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So, Pat, I had you on this because the last time we spoke, you had kind of a unique journey, and I got excited about it when you finally decided you were going to be on the podcast. So, I was wondering if you could kind of take us through the journey that you've gotten up to today, when you started, either before you started with Amazon and through that Amazon experience, and through I believe you were with an agency, and then now with Seller Pro. Is that fair?
Yeah, sounds about right.
Okay, well, the carpet is yours.
All right. Sounds good. Yeah, so I'd say, going back to starting my work life or, career out of college, a lot of dead end jobs, a lot of call centers, a lot of trouble doing that, a lot of working with a lot of characters, but eventually, got my way into working at a pretty good company called Intuit. I was in risk management there, really developed a lot of, corporate esque skills, if you will, to get me over to Amazon eventually. So I moved up to Seattle, started my journey with e-commerce and selling on Amazon specifically. As you mentioned, I was a trainer over there, training seller support agents globally to help sellers, navigate how to sell on Amazon and dealing with a lot of highly difficult, escalated issues that regularly occur when selling on Amazon. It is a very difficult journey for a seller. It gets even harder and harder these days. But yeah, some of the things. I don't know, Gene. We want to talk about some difficulties with the journey there.
Yes. Before we get into the difficulties,
Yeah,
I want to just kind of lay out the land of when people say selling on Amazon. What exactly would you sell on Amazon, and
yeah.
and how would somebody do that? Basically.
Yeah, I mean, so it's, if you have a product, right? A lot of the times you have a brand established these days and you want to put it on Amazon because that's, where everybody's going, obviously, to buy their goods, right? Because to take advantage of the 2 day, 1 day shipping, same day shipping, Amazon does it the best. So, I mean, I've helped a range of clients from makeup to pet products to supplements, lots of different brands. I've even helped people sell live fish on Amazon. You can
Oh
actually
my
sell,
gosh. Really?
of course, they can't be fulfilled by Amazon, but they can send it out themselves. So, I mean, you can sell just about anything legal on Amazon. There's obviously a whole lot of restrictions, and in addition to that, compliance that you need to meet. So if you are going to sell children's products, you have to go through and you have to get certification, safety documentation. There's a myriad of hurdles you have to go through. And a lot of the times, brands aren't aware of, wow, I didn't know I needed that. And I'm like, oh crap, I didn't know that there was a rule that I had to follow for this product. So, we can go into difficulties, in detail, but truly it's, anybody that wants to sell their products online. And generally these days they have a brand, they have an established, you know, line of products. They're not like eBay types,
Got
you
it.
don't go on, you don't resell, arbitrage stuff that you found at Dollar Tree. Really, that's not a thing so much anymore. You got like a legit thing going on, hopefully, to sell on Amazon.
In fact, I had heard back in the day, and this may not be true anymore, was there were people that would find out what is selling good on Amazon and then try to mirror what they're doing and kind of piggyback off of that. Is that still a thing, or is that kind of away now?
Yeah. So that's definitely still a thing where people will research product opportunities. Like for example, I had a client who went to Alibaba. He had some product research done by another, company, and they found this, drain cleaner. It was like a foam drain cleaner, and it was like, a new product to the market. It kind of caught wind on TikTok. And so, he wanted to sell on Amazon, didn't really have a brand, but, he was interested in like doing e-commerce. He was doing okay at first, but, then you have a ton of Chinese sellers these days that will be doing the same research. They'll find the products that they think will do well on Amazon, based on trends and all that. So definitely, yeah, people are still like looking for product opportunities constantly. Stuff is coming out all the time. But the huge challenge these days is competing with the Chinese. They are going direct to Amazon now. They are no longer the manufacturers that sell. They do, obviously. They'll sell you white labeled goods that you slap your brand on, and people are still doing that. But their margins are so incredibly good that they can just go directly and ship their own Chinese branded stuff on Amazon,
Wow.
and beat everybody on price, and still have amazing
So you
margins.
have, so if I'm understanding, and our listeners will understand, you have the manufacturer that is going to sell to somebody like myself to white label it, and while they're doing that, they're selling it direct as well. So they're being your direct competitor.
Yeah. So,
Oh my
like
gosh.
I had a client who was selling smart scales, and they, had a manufacturer in China develop like a new sort of style scale with handles, and, it would output, over 50 or 100 metrics. I don't remember, but it was like, something that wasn't available. And they worked with this manufacturer, and, they launched on Amazon, and, they did okay for a while. But then all of a sudden, you see all of these other sellers and their Chinese sellers pop up to sell the same thing, right? And they can undercut. So that happens often. And in fact, Amazon, caters to these Chinese sellers. They're
Oh
the ones
boy,
going
that's
out.
not good.
Yeah, if you want to hear some real talk, they're out there, man. Of course, they
Let's
want the rock bottom price. It's
let's dive a little bit into that.
yeah, sure. Well, let's get into it. I mean, there are initiatives at Amazon that, you know, teams going after these manufacturers and saying, hey, why not just go direct to market with your product? And that's been, I mean, the efforts without Amazon has been going on for a while now. But Amazon, started to see the success, and then, went and catered to these, and did a massive outreach to Chinese manufacturers, right? And I mean, I don't, you probably shop on Amazon. More and more, it's flooded with Chinese competitors who are now competing with other Chinese competitors.
Right.
So it's crazy.
So I guess the main thing is Amazon is trying to get the lowest price for items, whether it hurts the US market or not.
Yeah,
They just want to get the lowest price so consumers like you and I will go and buy it the cheapest there without
sure.
going somewhere else.
Yeah, absolutely. It's yeah, man. It's a game. It's I guess like a dopamine hit, right? You know,
well,
jeez.
well, now Amazon is now selling Hyundais online, and it'll just be a few more years, and they're going to, I'm sure, have every OEM selling
Yeah.
their vehicles online, and then the dealer becomes the servicing dealership versus the full-on selling dealership. So that's interesting. So I'm interested in hearing your journey at Amazon. When you got hired, the pros and cons, maybe anything that you had that you would like to talk about or can talk about at Amazon before you actually made the leap into going in business for yourself.
So this is the beauty and the pain segment, huh?
Right.
No. Yeah, it really there is a lot of that, bittersweet working at Amazon. I'll focus on Amazon, right? I started there as just another call center rep, but then quickly moved into training. I've always had a passion for training and consulting, so I really enjoyed my time doing that. I worked with escalation teams, so trying to figure out a myriad of like high level problems. I think I had mentioned, and so it was a lot of fun, right? I got to travel to the Philippines, Jamaica, Costa
Ooh.
Rica. Yeah, so it was a blast, man. I met a ton of cool people. Those were the days, and it's especially reminiscing about working with people. Now I'm kind of here in my room alone. Like, luckily, I have teammates, dispersed around, but and I can talk to them on Slack. But it's just on a sidetracking. It's just very interesting these days. I'm working with young people starting their careers, and they're working from home, and I'm like, wow, I'm not gonna get that office culture, right? Like that's the good experience and a bad experience. Part of it, good and bad. But the great thing about working with people is the camaraderie and being with humans is fun. But with that being said, being with humans is frustrating, and Amazon is a very difficult place to work on. To work at. And I was saying it's difficult to sell on. Well, it's difficult to work at. They really hold tight to their leadership principles. They expect 110% out of you. You're working late nights. You're answering calls in the middle of the night to meet India teams, but then in the morning you have to meet other teams around the world, and it's an expectation, and it can be very cutthroat. You have leaders coming down on leaders that are coming down on you. If things go wrong and you get on the bad side of a manager, you can be toast pretty quickly. I've seen it so many times where if they want you out, they'll get you out real quick, and it can be a very stressful and sort of anxiefied and depressing
Wow.
experience, man.
Now, if I remember correctly, you were based in Seattle at that time.
Yeah, so in the headquarters, in the mix of it.
And how many roughly people work for Amazon in that location?
Well, so I worked at various buildings, but I
Okay.
think at the time it was 30,000 people in the in
Whew.
the in the all the different buildings downtown Seattle. It was around 2014 when I started there, and that was the explosion period of Seattle and Amazon coming through and just ripping up that city and then changing the landscape,
Wow.
man. Yeah. So
So I've never
yeah,
worked for a place that had 30,000 people in an area. Like I currently work for a company that has 40,000 employees globally,
yeah,
but I'm remote. You know what I mean?
right.
I'm kind of at my own. Every once in a while, we'll go into a yearly rah session. You know what I mean? But what is it like when you got that many people going? Trying to do the same thing, and I see there's some issues that can come up, like it's a cutthroat scenario. But are you just a number at that point, or do you have a team that actually has some a face to it, or what? How does that look?
Yeah, I mean, the corporate landscape there, when we talk 30,000, we're talking every division out there, from Prime Video to selling on Amazon, the marketplace, to they have an app store. Amazon has their fingers in just about every pie. So, I was involved with a lot of marketplace teams, and they hire smart people there, and it's kind of refreshing in the sense that you're generally working with smart people. Of course, anywhere you go, there's idiots, but they're really good at politicking.
Right.
And those guys are the ones you got to watch out. So the youngins are watching this video. Man, you got to learn to deal with politics. But so I would say at times you do just feel like a number, but at times you can go and you can make a difference. And, like you can propose changes, they call them one pagers. And, you can get things done. It's a lot of work though to do it, but there's some rewarding moments. I don't want to talk crap the whole time, but yeah, I mean, obviously they're pretty smart. They're
Right.
they're they're doing things right, so their system, is working. I agree with the way that they dehumanize and they continue to do so. In my opinion, like I don't think they have the best workplace culture. In fact, I think that it got worse with Andy Jassy's CEO promotion. He's just coming in to do, make bottom lines for the shareholders, right? Under Jeff Bezos, I think there's a little bit more creativity, flexibility, and room to play, and more collaborative. They would reinvest a lot into their business, and that worked. But I don't think there's as much innovation happening there. You
Got
can
it.
go in, So yeah.
So my question is, if there is the toughest time that you had to deal with something at Amazon, if there is, great, and I'd like to go into that. If not, or after that, tell me what led you up to wanting to start something for yourself, and how difficult was that?
Yeah. So, working at Amazon, being a trainer, you're the face of, you're putting yourself out there. And every trainer that was before me and after me, it went through just hell regarding like you are nitpicked to death because it's your fault if you know employees aren't performing well, out the gate. And then you have a lot of scrutiny with, how you conduct training and are people going to get offended? And man, so I went through, towards the end, just I don't want to go into it, but, an onslaught of just criticism and being berated. And, again, this is the prior trainers before me, the same exact thing where they just got pushed to a breaking point, and so did I. I remember a meeting I was in with all the managers, and then my manager was on a call, and the whole damn meeting was my fault. These guys going around and just like telling me how crappy I'm doing. That was like, Jesus, man. F this, right? So
You can only do so much of that,
yeah, dude, it's
right?
like that happens all the time to lots and lots of people, man. There's a lot of horror stories I could go into with folks. Geez, man, like I don't know if we want to go into it, but when I was working there, there was a Chinese national, that came over on a visa, right, and had a job and doing well, but he got under somebody's, and I don't know the exact story. I'm just paraphrasing here, but he eventually, got fired, and it being such a rough, experience to get pushed out of Amazon. I believe this guy, attempted suicide, right? And
Oh my
so
God.
there's a ton of, horror stories. It's just kind of gross, but I assume, probably Amazon's not, super special in that. I assume there's a lot of corporations that.
Yeah, it
So I
sounds like
guess,
they put a lot of
yeah,
pressure on everybody to perform. And I could see where, someone, especially from Chinese descent, is not doing a good job, that their family will probably look very poorly on them.
correct.
And I could see how that could drive somebody to do what he attempted to do. That's a shame.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
obviously that gave you some inkling
Yeah.
that, hey, maybe that's not your home where you want to be at forever. So tell me about the thought process and how it was to be able to maybe go out and do what you're doing now.
Yeah, so I left Amazon in a choppy. Let's just say it was a bit of a choppy out. Me and my trainers from before, we're just following each other, man. And shortly thereafter, the trainer that took my place had a real bumpy road. So I actually wanted to do something completely different, and I got into handyman work. In fact, I started a business. I was self-employed, working in Seattle at the time. Not a lot of skilled laborers or folks that could do handyman work up there. So there's plenty of work to go around, and it's funny. I really love doing that stuff, like repairing houses and things of that nature, mechanics. But it's more of a hobby to me, or like, so doing it for work just took the joy out of it.
Right.
I think they say, like, kids going into mechanics who love working on their cars just all of a sudden just hate the job, right? So, like, it's
It's
funny.
kind of like the guy that does mows lawns and everything. You go to his house and his lawn's
Yeah,
not mowed at all.
right. Exactly. It's like they
Right.
say, do what you love, but maybe not. So I didn't love doing that, but I got some experience doing it for myself. That was probably the first introductory to self-employment. The challenges that I ran into, I wasn't disciplined enough. I wasn't keeping track of expenses really. I was getting into debt with buying tools and stuff of that, and I wasn't, constantly, dedicating 40 hours a week. It was also very tiring work, right? I wasn't used to that. Like, I'm in the office, man. So those were, yeah, valuable learnings.
Well, because
So,
they don't teach that in school about starting a business or being in business for yourself. What
yeah.
you have to go through, what you got to prepare. That's not taught. You have to go find that information out. And I'm sure Amazon didn't help you out with that.
No, not necessarily. I mean, it certainly does tell you to work hard, and you know, I'd say attention to detail is important. But yeah, no, absolutely, I agree with you. Like, no, and there's that's the flip side to working for yourself is like, well, you can not have to answer to anybody, but you have to answer to yourself.
Right.
And you've got a whole bunch of other things and problems that are going to arise, but at least I'm finding that they're my own problems, and if I want to be nice to myself, I shouldn't berate myself. So, but yeah, it was a good learning. I wasn't quite ready for it, or at least that wasn't what I wanted to do. So that's when I got back into the Amazon stuff, right?
Right.
I hooked up with a agency actually based in Tucson at the time, Nuance Media. They're on my LinkedIn. I still do work with them, and well, a wonderful relationship I've developed, and they encouraged me to do my own thing after a while of being there. But I was there. I mean, I'm still kind of there, but for about 5 years. So essentially, part of it, I felt like I was self-employed. They'd feed me clients, and I'd run the show, and I learned a whole
So,
lot
so what
about.
did what did Nuance Media do? What exactly do they do?
Yeah, so they're a full service Amazon agency. So they're similar to kind of what I'm doing, but if a business wants to sell on Amazon and they're not established yet, they would go to an agency like Nuance Media, and Nuance Media would be able to help them create the account, build the listings, make sure that compliance is met, and then get into marketing, copywriting, and then imagery design, so creative services. And then finally, once you have the house built, it's all about advertising and running, PPC on Amazon, and that's sort of the ongoing service that you sign up for. And so,
So
yeah,
when you were with them, you were like the fulfillment center for them. You did all that for them for their clients.
I I just basically oversaw a the project, right, as a account manager, a strategic
Okay.
account manager, and then I would delegate tasks to be done, like write the copy, you know help with creative briefs to have designers design images, and then work with the businesses and to ensure like quality was being met, that creative was being aligned, copy was good, that things were moving. If there was a speed bump, how do we get over it? I'd be the one to facilitate the problems. I'd jump into, I'd talk about mowing lawns. I'm generally in the weeds of stuff, so I had my hands in all of it, right? So, but yeah, my job was sort of like, yeah, building the house to get set up on Amazon, which is harder than it looks. You're not just slapping on an eBay listing. It's
Right.
so much more. And then yeah, getting involved with advertising teams to run, quality PPC campaigns. But yeah, that's kind of it. And then
So then,
yeah.
how did you make that transition from Nuance to Seller Pro,
Yeah,
starting your
so
own deal?
yeah, good question. Honestly, the what, couple years ago is it? Time flies, but when we all went through the tariff, the fiasco, I'll just put it that way, because it
Right.
was a fiasco for my industry. We all of a sudden, one overnight, we had clients that were like, I can't do this anymore, or like, we have to slash our budgets because of these tariffs, or we're very concerned about the expenses. And of course then you have the economy with its inflation issues, plus you have the margins becoming lower and lower on Amazon with the competition from China, and the fees increasing from Amazon year over year. So it was a matter of Nuance Media making cuts, and so I went down to a more of a part-time consulting role with them, and then I started my own thing essentially. So yeah, I still am affiliated with them on the consulting side of things, but I just had to do something on my own, and here I am doing it. I'm
Nice.
doing it, man.
So 4 years later, you're doing it. How has that journey, that 4 year journey, been for you as far as gaining clients or losing clients, or how has that been?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of scary, because I think in Mad Men they said the day you sign the client is the day you lose them, or something. I can't remember. Something of that nature. It's all very, like up in the air. Businesses can easily change, or yeah. So yeah, I mean, there's a challenge of making sure you're really taking care of your people, right, and your clients. And so anywhere that I can provide value in a business, I will. And I know we're going to talk about AI and stuff of that nature, but when I'm with a client, man, I'm trying to, not only help them with their Amazon, but if they've got some sticky thing going on in their business, I'm going to try to help them with that, right? Right. Bring value where you can, right?
So you're a whole consultant look, not just going to Amazon. It's like you're giving consulting services to a business that may need it in one form or fashion.
Yeah, I mean, because working with so many businesses at Nuance Media, right? There, so many businesses do things correctly, but then they don't. They're not prepared for what Amazon looks like, or they don't have a team member that is able to collaborate. Collaboration is huge when you're working with a client. If they're not collaborating, or if they're ignoring, or if they're nitpicking and lamenting, like the reason I say that is I just got done with the guy at Nuance, and man, he was the worst.
Oh no.
Yeah, going a horror story on him, but anyway, it's really about teamwork, right? I use that term lightly, but it really is like like collaboration and bringing ideas to the table and really working at them. And those are the best clients. And I think I try me and my team to work with those clients, and then to try to avoid clients that we don't see we would foster that sort of relationship with. I find our stuff is a lot of really mom and pop boutique style agency at this point. I'm not looking to
Nice.
scale, you know what I mean? But anyway, yeah, it's just a learning, right? Businesses need help elsewhere outside of the Amazon stuff, and if we can provide that, it's only going to help everybody. So
Got it. Got it. You kind of share like some of the bumps and bruises that you get, the experience that you've gotten, and you can use that to help others.
yeah,
Kind of like how our podcast is set up. The whole idea is that we are going to open up those playbooks and strategies and pivots and challenges to hopefully it encourages those up and coming industry leaders to prepare themselves for what could happen, right?
yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So you mentioned AI. Tell me about how AI in today's market could be helping or hindering you in your industry.
Yeah, right. Bittersweet there, I guess, too. AI is crazy, man, isn't it? I'll just start with that. Man, you could even get real philosophical with it. In fact, I heard on a side note, these Anthropic, or I believe maybe it was OpenAI. They're like hiring like philosophy majors and stuff, man. Because
Really?
yeah, yeah, like they really want to. I was like, man, that's really cool. I don't have like exact details, or I couldn't tell you specifically why they're doing it, but I think it's really to get deeper with, how AI is going to evolve. I think,
Right,
right?
exactly.
Nobody knows, but that's really cool. Like those philosophy majors are like, yeah, right on, man. Finally, like probably, going to be a good opportunity for them. I thought that was pretty fascinating, right? So,
Yeah, that's interesting because maybe they're trying to have AI have more and more of a human element
sure.
to it. You know what I mean? What do you think about AI? Do you think AI is for here forever and is going to continue helping, or do you think it's going to eventually harm the situation too?
Well, I mean, it's certainly shifting the landscape, no doubt, right? And I guess, it's a good and sort of a scary thing because we've adapted where we have a pretty small team that can do a bunch of stuff, right? That used to take a larger team. So we can, work with Claude. I guess that's our preferred robot, and we're starting to, develop our own SaaS, right? We're vibe coding, man. And I think SaaS is like an industry that's, pretty threatened at this point, man. We're making like putting up a knowledge base in a day, or, a project management software. Like we don't need Notion or ClickUp. We developed our own calendar and things of that nature, right? Like, so it's very fascinating. And I think when you say like, and we can do creative now, we're little mini designers. So it's cool. Like we can kind of keep a small tight team, and it's easier to manage, right? And we can learn from each other, and so that's really cool, right? We have all these awesome tools, and it's very fascinating, and like I think it's all about adapting. And sure, man, it's probably hurting designers and obviously like copywriters and all that, tons of industries, but I mean, I don't know. Some folks out there, they'll say like, well, think about the tractor, right? All these different modern marvels that were thought to take away jobs completely, but new jobs are created. I think that's probably, hopefully, going to be the case where it's just going to evolve, and instead of being a designer, you're developing software that does better designs than the other guy's software. I
Right?
don't know.
Better,
I think
maybe
it's like,
better designs and faster,
yeah,
but hopefully they can still attribute to have a human element
yes,
into that because I think it still needs a human element in there to advance it or to make it sell it to another human, right? It's
yeah, 100%. That's all. That's a great call out that that you mentioned. Absolutely, human element there is needed, and really working with the robots, and not just buying into the slop that's produced on the first try. So
right.
yeah, there's tons of refinement, iteration that is it's pretty cool. Just like how you can get lost in a prompt in a chat.
Oh, no doubt, no
Yeah,
doubt. It's funny you say that because
yeah,
I had subscriptions after subscriptions on all
right.
different types of platforms, and prompting is one of those things that it's tough and you can get lost in it. And I was part of a team that created a platform that has 146 different tools within it inside one platform, which is
Yeah.
amazing versus having all these subscriptions for each one. And I remember as we were developing different things as testing, you put the prompts in, and the wide range of how it would read that prompt would be crazy. You know what I mean? So I see what you're saying is prompting, you can get lost in it. And I've done that many, many times.
Yeah, yeah. And then several hours later, you
Yeah. And you're like, what happened?
yeah, it's nuts. But it's kind of fun too, you know.
So what's next for Pat? Where's Pat headed? And maybe what is your perfect client that you're looking for?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think when we were chatting, I kind of jokingly said I'm not a 5 year guy. Like I've always kind of been I guess we talk about adaptive. I'll use that word, but a little bit fast and loose. But I like that, man. You got to be ability, an ability to change, even more so nowadays, man. With AI, we're talking
Yep.
about. Holy crap, dude!
The
Like,
magic word pivot.
yeah, pivot, dude. And like, I hate to get off subject again, but like one of my buddies, good friend of mine, got laid off at Amazon. That's another terrible thing that's going on. We talk about the detriment of AI, but like, I'm scared for him because he's out of the marketplace. He's been out for what, 6, 7 months, and like so much stuff has happened. People are learning more and more skills, and it's like, dude, are you on Claude, bro? Are you like vibe coding? Because you're gonna need that when you get to the next job. Like, holy,
Right.
Anyway, man. So the the next steps, man, would definitely like to continue to build Seller Pro. I think we're really focused on like you said, the customized SaaS approach. We'd love to be able to build something that we could partner with other agencies to use, maybe even sell it as a software as a service, right? I think we're doing a really cool thing, building a lot of unique tools, like you had been doing with your other company. So, very specific to Amazon. I think we're also looking to expand our helping new brands launch on Amazon, and sort of getting into the realm of what that looks like on in 2026 and so on, going on, right? You can't just launch a brand on Amazon and expect to be successful. You got to do a whole lot of other multi-channel marketing, and a lot of that is community building via social. And so, some great areas to we're exploring and getting good at is TikTok and driving traffic back to Amazon. But you got to start anywhere, finish anywhere, and really go at it to create like a very captivating story as a brand. And those are the brands we want to work with, right? So people that aren't buying stuff on Alibaba trying to resell it, right? People that are passionate about the product that they have. Obviously, we want to work with folks that have a good product. Sometimes you don't, and that's okay. But are collaborative, man. Like that's the, I guess, one of the key words that I keep bringing up.
Because
That can bring
if they
ideas.
can't express their message and what they're trying to achieve, it makes it really hard for you to do what you need to do.
Yeah, 100%. So yeah, I'm just getting this mini PTSD of this guy I was working with. So I was the least collaborative person on the planet. Great brand though. It was
Right.
like sad, man. Like, come on, dude. Anyway, collaboration, man. Working together.
Right.
Yeah, being
So
human to human, man.
exactly.
Yeah.
So this is the time where I ask my question that I ask almost every single guest because it's interesting how different everybody answers the question. But let's assume that our listeners got distracted. They didn't get anything out of today's message, but you want to make sure you leave them with one specific message that pushes through all of the noise that they hear all day. What would that be?
Yeah, I don't know, man. I've been thinking about empathy lately, especially after talking about, the horrors of working at Amazon. Again, there is a lot of beautiful moments there, but, empathy just seems to be a little bit of a, gosh, it even has like a negative connotation, like of being weak these days. I think empathy is something that we need to, make popular again, and really like try to step in somebody else's shoes, and try to understand everybody's got problems, right? And I think that just parlays into building strong teams, and getting to know your fellow teammate, and knowing what's going on with them, and collaborating. That's I guess I'll go back to that, man.
Yeah, it's a common theme because if you don't have empathy and put yourself in their shoes, right?
Yeah.
It's harder to communicate, and yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, communication, man. I'll just, yeah, all these words, right? They all kind of blend together, but gosh, like communication is just such a kind of a novel thing now, like when it comes to businesses and the lack thereof, and the art of communication is just, oh my God, yeah. So yeah, you can, if you're a better communicator in business, then you're going to be a better communicator with your loved ones too, right?
Right.
It's
Exactly.
all asynchronous or whatever.
Well said. Absolutely. So, if someone wanted to get a hold of you about starting something with Amazon, how would they get a hold of you?
Yeah, I think just going to the website and filling out our contact form. Got a pretty clean one page sort of website. Down at the bottom, you can fill out the details, and we'll get back to you within 24 hours. The website will be sellerproagency.com.
Sellerproagency.com.
Yep.
So if you're looking to get on Amazon and you want a professional to help you through that process, please look up Pat Hanna. He's an expert. He knows what he's talking about. I already have a potential referral for him, so we'll kind of check that out. He'll be able to protect you from the pivots that you might need to go through
Yeah.
if you don't make any mistakes, right?
Yeah, man. Yeah, it's fun, man. Yeah.
Awesome.
Good times.
Awesome. So, folks, thank you for watching another episode of Revenue Playbook Chronicles. If you liked our content, please like, comment, share. Somebody said you can hype also on YouTube. And we are just now getting ready to go on to, what is that called? Spotify. So you might be able to find us on Spotify soon. So, again, thank you. And we will see you on the next one.